Hello.
Hello. Good evening. How you
Good
doing, Jess?
evening. I'm really good. How are you doing?
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Do you know what? I was literally debating whether I could still say that.
It's the age-old
too
January
late?
conundrum, isn't it? When does that stop being? But it's our first pour and sip of the year, so I think we're all right.
Yeah, Happy New Year to everyone joining us tonight. If you're new to Pour and Sip, if you're one of our veterans, if you're new, give us a wave, say hi. And obviously, you've been here before, give us a wave and say hi. How was your Christmas, Jake?
Yes, it was fantastic. Yeah, we've got a little toddler who's like just this year grasped what Christmas is. So
the magic is back.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, I love Christmas anyway, but now it's sort of through the eyes of this kid who's just like.
Do you not find it annoying that Father Christmas gets all the credit though?
Well, yeah, but he's pretty good, isn't he? We've got people saying hello. We've got Jeffster saying good evening. Pexman, we've got some regulars. Paul Cruz saying evening all. People laughing about, just completed my dry fortnight at least.
That's what we were just talking about.
Exactly, yeah.
Glad to see you all here, I've got to be honest.
We've got Simon's having a drier Jan rather than a dry Jan. That might be sensible. Evening, Alex. Simon's saying no Andy again. No, well, we sort of we swap around, don't we? Andy probably should have been back tonight in this.
He should have been, but I was the scheduling nightmare, so he kind of
swap around.
Yeah, you'll get a double Andy, I'm sure, very soon.
And no one's actually asked about the order just yet, but let's clarify. It is in the description, but we're going to be going to Daftmill first. We've got Francis. We are going to then go to Holyrood with Calum, and then we have our third dram is Ardnahoe with Ryan. And I mean, I'm always excited by Pour and Sip, but this is a very good box. There's no feigned enthusiasm about tonight. I'm really up for this. Yeah.
Yeah, when you sent me the thing, I was like, oh my god.
So should we crack on? Should we bring Francis in? And I think you're gonna sort of lead the way on that one. I'll keep an eye on some comments and let's do it.
Cannot wait. Hi, Francis. Hello. How's it going?
Very well, thanks. Yeah, good.
Amazing. This is definitely a good way to brighten up the longest weeks of January I've ever experienced. Where are you coming to us from today?
I'm sitting in my dining room, come office, come dramming, come sample room, which is probably 20 yards from the distillery.
Oh, amazing. The commute of dreams. So I feel like everyone's going to probably be sipping this whiskey already. But before we quite get, I guess it's sort of hard as the sort of co-founder, distiller, head of all things at Daftmill to separate you from the distillery. But it would be great to hear a bit about yourself and how you came to own a distillery.
Yeah, it's almost so long ago I've kind of forgotten. We've been farming here for 6 generations, something like that. In the area, not necessarily on Daftmill, but growing malting barley mostly, beef cattle, potatoes, just sort of general farm stuff. And back in 2002, I think it was, the price of malting barley was less than the cost of growing it, and we started thinking of either growing something else, doing something different, or adding value to what we were producing. And that kind of led us down the road to the idea of starting our own distillery.
So it really all began at the barley, didn't it?
Yeah. We've been growing barley for the major distillers for years. The local maltster at the time was owned by Allied Distillers, so our barley had gone into Scapa, Tormore, Ardbeg, Glendronach, all the ones in the Ardbeg portfolio, in the Allied portfolio at that time. Now most of them belong to Chivas.
Okay. So we've had actually, funny enough, we've had a few whiskies on Pour and Sip recently that take a sort of farming approach to whiskey, you know, growing their own barley and things like that. But it sort of sounds like you didn't think of a whiskey and then take a sort of like farm grain first approach. You were a farm.
Yes.
And then you had sort of, it was just the natural course of things, which is really interesting. Were you like the original farm distillery, is it fair to say?
Yeah, we sort of reinvented the wheel, if you like. We went back 200 years to when farmers produced their own whiskey from barley that they couldn't sell. So it was a similar sort of idea. But the problem in the modern world falls down when your rates, your property tax, or the cardboard tube that the bottle comes in costs more than the barley that goes into the bottle. So the main ingredient is quite a small component in the whole thing nowadays.
What was your like vision for when you began to, you know, put Daftmill into motion? Like, was it anything like what it's become now?
I don't know if it was a vision. Our aim was to produce a decent dram. That was about all we wanted to do. And we were trying to make it in the lowland style, if there was such a thing as a lowland style. When we started, you had Glenkinchie and Auchentoshan and Bladnoch working intermittently at the time. So there wasn't really a definite lowland style, but I sort of took sort of Rosebank, St Magdalene, something like that, as to what we would kind of like it to be, you know, light, fruity, floral, fresh. Yeah.
That's amazing. And has that changed at all over the years? I mean, actually, no, I take that question back. My question would be that growing your own barley and it being really seasonal, how is it harder then with a smaller like amount of barley to keep the consistency?
I don't try to keep consistency. I leave that to Johnny Walker and the massive brands that are brilliant at producing the same thing day in, day out. I just take the seasonality and that and work with it and do the best I can with what we've got and produce the best spirit that I can. And, you know, each day is a wee adventure. And there is variations between barley varieties, season, things I'm trying in the distillery and whatnot. So by releasing it as vintages rather than a standard 10 or 12 or whatever it is, it allows us to have the variations in there.
Can you talk through a sort of like set the scene for Daftmill for anyone who doesn't know what it is or its style or, you know, the nature of a farm distillery? Can you sort of like set the scene?
Well, we're still farmers. We're primarily farmers, and farming takes precedent. I must sow the barley in the spring. You can't not do that. So therefore, end of February, the distillery shuts down. We're busy on the farm, sowing barley, getting cattle out to grass, planting potatoes, all the usual farm jobs. And by end of May, mid-June, that's sort of quieting down a wee bit. And so we go in and start distilling, and we can distill in June and July, and the end of July, beginning of August, we shut down again for harvest time. And that takes us through to beginning mid-November, and then we run November, December, January, February. So that's our sort of cycle. So we that limits the amount we produce, and it enabled us to get to 10, 12 years old without needing to sell spirit early. We don't employ anyone outside. So by just producing small amounts and working for a few months of the year, that we were able to manage the cash flow through to have I think it was about.
I mean, it has to be sort of maybe explained to some of the members just how like unspeakably cool like growing all your own barley for your whiskey is, and how exciting all of these your early releases were. I mean, I can remember so on Master of Malt we used to we had a ballot, and then we would write the names of the people on the labels to discourage people from reselling and encourage them to open that bottle. And oh god, I spent a lot of times writing odd numbers and names on your bottles to try and get them sort of to the right people.
I'd suggested writing their credit card number on the front label. I didn't think many people would sell it with that on it. The credit card number on the front and the 3 digits on the back.
Yeah.
And nobody took that.
Oh man, but yeah, we've been talking about getting a Daftmill into pour and sip for a long time, and yeah. So basically, I guess I'm just saying this is very exciting. I'm excited. Not much, it's because the whiskey's very good as well. Sorry, Jess, I've just derailed, but I'm just.
No, honestly, great. Also, you were the one writing the order numbers. I feel like you're like, oh my god, it's in my hands. But it's also, I mean, that actually brought me quite nicely onto the fact that you were saying that you didn't need to like release things early, but I mean, taking that to the extreme, you waited over 10 years since filling your first cask to release your first whiskey.
2005 to 2018, so shy of 30 years, plus 2 years building the distillery and that as well.
What's the sort of like a size comparison is what I'm trying to get at. Like how small is your production?
Tiny.
Like how limited is the whiskey?
Tiny. We aim to produce about 20,000 litres. So that could be 100, 150 casks, depending on whether it's barrels or butts or what you're filling.
Okay.
So, most of the average distilleries will be in the millions of litres, and the big guys are in the tens of millions. And one of our nearest neighbours, Calum Rae, they're in the hundreds of millions of litres. Before Calum Rae expanded, I reckoned it would take me 11 years to do what they did in a day.
I mean, that puts it into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah. They will probably spill more than I produce.
Yeah, isn't there like a crazy fact about, no, I'm going to derail this now, where like there's like the amount lost to the Angels share is the amount that like bourbon produces in a year or something. Does anyone know what I'm talking about?
I don't know the figures, but it's quite massive.
Well, I think it's time we get on to the current whiskey that we've all got in our glasses, which is the 20.
Shall I read out some comments, Jess?
Oh, yes, please.
I mean, just because obviously other people have already got onto the whiskey. So Jeff just saying, wow, this is really nice. 46%, but doesn't need any water. He's getting a bit of tobacco on the nose, summer fruits on the palate. Mike Pizarro's getting some orchard fruit, getting some apples. Plenty of people getting sort of apples or apple adjacent notes. Clive says he gives the dram to his wife to do the nose bit because her nose is more sensitive. So she gets some orange and apple brandy. Steve Coleman Williams has got apple and lemons. The promise of spring. There you go. How's that for a note?
Wishful thinking, maybe.
Somebody, I'll just try to find it, said, it was, here we go. Simon says that the nose takes him back specifically to his mum's apple and almond cake, which, yeah, I mean, that's exactly the kind of right area, isn't it?
both of those are quite common markers in our whisky. Marzipan, almonds, apples more in the winter release, maybe more heading towards summer fruits in the summer releases.
Yeah, it's like a very, it's spring. It's spring in a whiskey. What is it about the production at Daftmill that makes it so light and so fruity?
We start with a clear wort. We mill the malt quite coarsely, not to generate too much flour, too much fine particles. And then we mash very slowly to get as clear a wort as we can. To start off with, it looks like a cup of tea with milk in it. We want it to look like a cup of tea without milk in it, or ideally like a pint of lager. That's what I want the wort, the juice that comes off the malt to look like. Then we do quite a long fermentation. We allow the fruity esters to build up in the wash. The bacteria comes in from the barley and feeds on the dying yeast cells and produces extra levels of fruit. So we leave it longer for that to happen. Then we distill very slowly to try and capture these and give the spirit lots of time in contact with the copper. So we get a nice clean spirit. We don't want any rubbery notes or meaty notes sort of in it. We're looking for a nice clean, fresh spirit.
Okay, I mean,
the majority of our whiskies matured in bourbon barrels. Till we started bottling our whiskey, it was all first fill bourbon or sherry. And now we refill some of our own casks, but still a lot of first fill bourbon.
I mean, it's just going to amplify all those lovely like fruity notes and give it that sort of dessert nature, isn't it? And the barley itself, do you change the varieties that you grow
all the time? So in a really good year, we could produce maybe 1,000 tons of barley.
What does it mean in whiskey terms?
Whiskey, 5 tons of barley gives you 4 tons of malt.
Okay.
A ton of malt will give you 400 litres of pure alcohol. You've got 0.7 of a litre in a bottle at 0.46% alcohol, so you can sort of water that down. A bourbon barrel will hold 125 litres of alcohol. So a ton of malt will fill 3 bourbon barrels, which will give you, maybe 700 bottles at cask strength. A bit more once they're watered down.
That's not many.
So,
that maths was way above my pay grade, but
yeah, it was good though, wasn't it?
yeah. So yeah, a ton of malt will give. Well, what a calculator. 400.
Apologies, I didn't mean to get everyone on the spreadsheets.
No, I like it.
Yeah, if there was no losses to evaporation, you're looking about 1,200 bottles from a ton of malt.
Wow. So yeah, less.
But we do get evaporation, so
yeah.
1,000 bottles, something like that. And again, it depends on whether it's 46 or 40% cask strength.
Yeah, we've got some more comments coming through. Mike's applauding your patience producing this whiskey. Waiting those 12 years before starting to bottle. Clive and the Real Boingo are both getting sort of honeyed notes, and it's just like a lot of people saying this is just very, very nice. Mike Pizzaro, oh my god, this is delicious. People are trying to place the orange notes as well, and Alex Basby's gone ahead and paired it with some orange matchmakers by the sounds of it. So some classic like leftover from Christmas action there. Sounds like.
Point I was making before I got lost in numbers there was we could go about 1,000 tons of barley, but we only use about 100 tons in the distillery.
Okay.
Right.
So 90% of what we grow, we still sell on to other maltsters and distillers. So we need to grow what the big guys want to buy.
Mhm.
So most of the varieties we grow are what Edrington or Chivas or whoever is looking to buy.
So more commercial styles of barley.
Yeah. We do grow a bit of Golden Promise old stuff, and we try the odd field of different things from time to time. But majority of what, and that allows me then to be able to select the best 3 fields or the best field, depending on the size, and keep that back for myself.
Yeah.
Then sell the rest to Macallan.
Cream of the crop.
Yeah. So, whereas if I grew something specifically for myself and it turned out not so good, I'm stuck with it.
Yeah, interesting.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of questions. Jeff's is asking about when you're setting up the distillery, is any of the equipment secondhand, or did you have to source all brand new kits? And he'd also like to know a bit about the stills, please, as well.
Other than a couple of tanks and a few valves, we've got some valves out of Inverleven in Dumbarton, the malt distillery beside the grain distillery. The rest of it was all bespoke made to fit in the space that we had available. We did look at trying to buy second-hand stuff, but there wasn't a lot about. Most of it was huge and all of it was worn out. So it didn't make sense for us to buy someone else's stills or whatnot. And the second part of the question was shape of the still.
About the still. So yeah, I guess like the shape and the line arm and things like that. Yeah.
The stills are similar size to Kilhoman, Edradour, and I think Norfolk down south, which was at the time the sort of legal minimum size, kind of just about. It's all based around doing a 1 ton of malt mash so that it fits in the stills. So the wash still is 3,000 litres and the spirit still is 2,000 litres. We fill them a bit less than that because we get more reflux, more copper contact that way. They are, I don't know how I would describe the shape, classic still shaped. But
go on Google image search, people.
yeah, but they have a rising lie arm. The pipe that comes off the top of the still goes up the way gradually, rather than most distilleries, the lie pipe is descending. So anything that you boil over the neck of the still will end up in the spirit with it descending. With mine, it's got to get all the way up and into the condenser. You know, if it condenses against the side of the lie pipe, it will run all the way back into the still and be boiled again, which leads to the lighter style of whiskey, possibly.
Spot on. And then I think there's one more question. Clive was asking, with such a small production, where do you sell it through? I mean, I don't think selling it through has been the problem so far, has it?
Well, I'm starting to get nervous now. We have an exclusive agreement with Berry Brothers and Rudd, who do all our distribution for us. It kind of suits us because we've only got one invoice to send out, one check to chase up, and they handle all the UK and worldwide distribution for us. So they manage the logistics and get it to guys like Master of Malt and other good whiskey retailers.
Indeed. And then we asked
very nicely. It allows me then, everyone who emails me and says, can I get it for my shop? I can just say, sorry, you need to speak to Berry Brothers, and I'll let them pass that on.
Yeah, don't even open the door. Very interesting. I wanted to ask you a bit about, unless there's no more questions, Jake, just checking.
Yeah, sorry, that was the two questions.
You want to take them away from the poorer sippers. But I wanted to sort of pick your brain for a second on why you think that other distilleries have begun more recently to follow suit in putting barley, like growing their own barley and that nature of whiskey making.
Yeah, everyone saw how easy it is for us to do it, and is jumping on the bandwagon. No, I don't know. You've only got 3 ingredients in whiskey, so it makes sense to emphasize the quality of your ingredients if you can. And lots of new distilleries are coming at things from different directions. We are coming at it from, like, say, being a farmer. Previous to us, it was like, say, Ben Romach and Gore MacPhail built Ben Romach because they were independent bottlers and were looking to secure a supply. Similar with Signatory and Ardnahoe and stuff. So we came at it from the opposite end of the industry.
Amazing. Is it obviously because you wait, so long to release your whiskies? Do you ever, how do you sort of? I mean, I guess this is the question for every whiskey maker, but how do you sort of think ahead to the future? Because obviously it's more in like decades than it is in a shorter amount of time. Is there any sort of casks that you want to play about with, or do you just see where the barley sort of takes you?
It takes us ages to do anything, so that's why everything takes a long time. I kind of just think if it's good now, bottle it. Because we have there was a couple of sherry casks that I thought were, I wouldn't have said good, but we're okay. We're fair. Would have done. And I thought, they'll get better as time goes on. And they actually went over the top and went pretty tannic and whatnot. Turns out there was a retailer that really loved them. And so we bottled that as an exclusive for that retailer. But I personally didn't rate that very highly. I think they were better earlier, which is the danger for us with a light spirit in a first fill shot cask. It can quickly go over the top.
Yeah. Do you do much in terms of finishing at all?
Nothing. We had a wee experiment. We put some that had been in a bourbon cask into some PX casks, and they were only in 6-8 weeks, something like that. Fairly short period, and they took on an amazing colour. And I was frightened it was going to go over the top again. So I chickened out and put them back into the bourbon barrel, and then they matured again for another 3 years or something in the bourbon barrel. And we bottled that for Secundra at the Whiskey Exchange. But we described it as a bourbon cask taking a holiday in the PX cask and returning home with a nice suntan.
I love that.
I like that.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah.
No, we haven't done any exotic casks or anything like that. Nearly all bourbon and sherry. 90% bourbon.
Oh wow! Very nice.
I'll just grab one more comment. Steve Colin Williams, was saying this is a beautifully light dram that floats over the tongue. And he's saying so you've got to take note of the notes of honey, heather, and hint of banana as it does so. Yeah. And then Ike Montfalcon, which is a great name, was on their way home when this started, and so they're like burst in like, I'm here, it's great. I haven't missed the Daftmill. That was a little while ago, so yeah, hopefully they've been enjoying.
They've caught up.
I find this release slightly more astringent. There's a slight prickle on the back of the palate, so after you swallow. And I put this down to the casks from this release were all from the top of the warehouse, so it's much hotter So the wee bit more sort of wood spiciness in them than the ones from the bottom of the warehouse. So I can't.
That's
remember.
amazing, because I guess as
So
well.
compared to say the 2010, I think this has a little more prickle to it.
How often do you get all the vintages up and sort of see them side by side? Is that something that you can do? I don't know how much you would have an archive, but
Very rarely, only when doing things, tastings for people. Sometimes whiskey shops will ask us to do a tasting with them, and they'll have saved bottles from previous releases to do this with. Once it's bottled, even before it's hit the shops, I'm kind of forgetting about it and thinking about the next one that's coming out. We bottled a 15-year-old just before Christmas there, which will be hitting the shops end of this month, I think. Maybe in the next month.
Nice. Yeah, some people asking about what the next releases are looking like. Yeah.
Currently, we're doing half a dozen single casks, which kind of pulling my hair out at the moment because I was trying to get this out before the duty increase in February, but it's not looking like that now. And then I need to start thinking about getting casks pulled out of the warehouse now so that I can get them sampled and start putting samples together for the summer release, which we'll have to try and get together before sort of May time. So, there's always the next one coming along. So that takes a lot more of the attention than what we've done previously.
There's no time to rest on your laurels. It feels like you deserve some.
Yeah, everyone's got to remember that you also, this is only for part of the year, right? You're farming for so much of the year as well. There's a lot to do. I'm conscious of time. There's a couple more comments. Mike Bizarro, who was trying to have half of each dram tonight, has relented. He's poured the rest. He's loving it. Getting some maple syrup on the nose now. And then Jeff has just asked, you've sort of been talking about future releases there, but Jeff was specifically asking if there were any sherry casks in the near pipeline.
Yeah, there's a sherry cask, single cask sherry cask being bottled for. Can I mention retailers on here that aren't Master Malt?
Wow.
Okay, I won't. There's one for general UK release that Master Malt will have, and another two that they won't.
Very, very diplomatic.
Perfect.
Amazing. That flew by. Thank you so much. That was delicious. I'm going to save my boyfriend was like, please don't drink all of the Daftmill because I want to try it. So I've had to save some for him, much to my dismay.
Oh, wow. There's actually just a comment that's just come in from Rick. Is saying he works for New Barnes Brewery in Edinburgh, who did a little swap of some yeast for some barrels a while ago, and he was wondering how that whiskey's going.
I've not looked at the whiskey. It was a really exciting fermentations, though. They went off like a bomb, and what a hard job keeping them in the washback. But, it was like I say, really exciting to do. In the middle of it, we got a really hoppy, I think it was a Belgian ale yeast or something. It was incredibly hoppy, and it gave the spirit quite a sort of menthol note, which was quite weird. I'd never heard that before. Certainly a vegetable sort of note of some kind. But,
they say they've had some Imperial Stout in those barrels for a year now, so exciting on both sides by the sounds of it.
Yeah. So. I hope they haven't leaked.
I'm intrigued by that.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us, Francis. It's obviously, genuinely just thrilled to have you here and talk about this whiskey with you. So thank you so much. And if you're able to stick around to the end, we'll see you then.
Look forward to hearing others.
Thank you so much.
It's interesting getting the comment in from Rick there, because it kind of leads on quite nicely to the some of the stuff that our next guest gets up to, I think.
Thank you, Rick.
Should we bring in Calum? Sorry, I don't know if you had some final thoughts there, Jess. I'm sort of powering through.
No, I didn't realise that it'd gone 8 o'clock, so that just says it all, really.
Let's crack on. Let's bring Calum in.
Hello.
Hi guys, how you doing?
Yes, we are very good. We're one dram in, and yeah, I'm bubbling with enthusiasm.
Yeah, I mean, I could sit and listen to Francis talk all day. To be honest, like it's the more stories you hear out of Daftmill, the more you fall in love with the place. To be honest, so it's a tough act for me to follow, but I'll do my best.
Oh, there's some exciting stuff happening at your end as well. I mean, so this is Holyrood, of course. People know from the order, but if you'd like to sort of explain what it is that you do and how you got there.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the distillery to start with. So
Sure.
Holyrood Distillery was founded by a Canadian couple, Rob and Kelly Carpenter, alongside David Robertson, who's a former master distiller at Macallan. And essentially, for a long time, Edinburgh hasn't really had a single malt distillery. We've had North British ticking away up in the far end of the city, but the city's gone through a bit of a explosion recently, and we've gone from no single malt distilleries to 3 in a very short amount of time, which is really exciting. It's a funny thing that capital city of Scotland, but there wasn't actually a lot of whiskey making happening there, which I always found quite funny. So the Holyrood was set up really as a chance to explore a part of whiskey that maybe the founders at the time felt wasn't really maybe being looked at or played around with on a massive scale. So what drives us is really flavor. That's everything we do. We're lucky that it's, compared to some of the bigger guys, it's not so much about how much we make, but how good it is. And as the distillery manager there and as a distiller, there's no place that really you'd rather work. We get to really experiment, as much as really the SWA will allow us to do. Basically, that's our only limiting factor normally. We do a lot of work with specialty malts, like you would maybe see in brewing. So yeah, following on from the link there with the brewing, we're quite closely, affiliated with a lot of breweries and stuff. And Edinburgh was historically a beer town, the home of 80 Shilling and all that kind of stuff. So as well as working with specialty malts, we've done a lot of work with heritage malts, so varieties that have maybe fallen out of fashion, that were previously used, maybe anywhere from 50 to 100 years ago or whatever. We will try and dig them up and see if we can get our hands on them.
And again, that's kind of, maybe where flavour might have given way to yield in the interim, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bugbear of mine that the rules of Scotch whisky, there's nowhere in there it says it has to taste good. So it's quite funny, but yeah, we work with the malt side of things, but also, yeast is super important to us. You mentioned about the trade-off of brewing yeast there. Again, we've used pretty much everything we can get our hands on and are allowed to use, everything from brewing strains, wine strains, sake yeast, rum yeast. My favorite that we worked with, we had a sourdough bread starter that dated back to the time of the Black Death. Weirdest thing we've ever made, but that's part of the fun that we have. We actually forgot about it for a while as well, and that led to some issues. It was kind of coming alive in a bucket in the back corner of the distillery. But yeah, and that's the way we look at it is, I think for a long time people have relied on casks to give them flavor in whiskey, and it's such an important part of whiskey. But there's 2 very important steps that precede that for a long time people kind of weren't putting the emphasis into. And you mentioned the rise of like farm to glass distilleries and stuff. A lot of people like ourselves have kind of looked at the mashing stage and the fermentation. And one of my distillers, Chris, has a great quote, which is fermentation is the engine room of your whiskey. And I think that kind of sums it up really nicely. So that's a kind of brief overview. My own journey, I actually trained as a sound engineer and used to be a roadie. So how I ended up as a distillery manager is a question I ask myself constantly. But I got my start kind of, pretty humble origins. I started as a temporary Christmas time packaging assistant at a distillery in Fife. And from there, kind of, caught the bug, became a tour guide, and, enjoyed telling people about whiskey and beer production as well. Brewing is kind of where I got my start. Decided I'd maybe had enough of the public and went back to the production side and was in packaging again. But I got the shot to be a brewing assistant and jumped on that, started making beer. And then at the time we were also making whiskey as well. So that was a kind of introduction for me. And then I managed to find my way to Edinburgh, and joined Holyrood in 2021, which feels quite a long time ago now. Under the cloud of COVID, I kind of slunk in there, but I've never looked back ever since. And lucky enough to take over as a distillery manager there about a year and a half ago now. So we're
Nice.
We're the home of whiskey geeks. We seem to have become that. So I will do my best to answer any questions. But if any of the folk watching have a very geeky one, fire it at me, and I'll do my best to answer it for you.
We've got some real boingers saying, "Oh, hello, ex sound engineer."
Well, there you go.
And also totally taken my whiskey here too. Yeah.
Well, that's it. Whiskey's just liquid engineering, is how I look at it in a way. So it's I'd like to say there's a lot of transfer of knowledge, but there's really not. The only sort of prevailing thing that comes over from sound engineering to whiskey is if you put good stuff in at the start, you're going to get good stuff coming out at the end. And that's, one of the few things I've held on to.
Sense, doesn't it?
Isn't there definitely a distillery somewhere
absolutely.
that plays like crazy rock music while the barrels are maturing?
Yeah, I saw Metallica are doing that and messing around with vibrational stuff. There's actually some guys at Heriot Water working on something similar to that as well.
Maybe your two worlds will collide more than you think.
Who knows? That would be the dream come true. I think that would be a bit serendipitous if that happens. But if Metallica want to get on the blower and give me a call, then by all means,
I think it was Hudson in America that used to they had speakers just pumping music at their casks. I think a few people have tried something similar, just getting more education and interaction. And
I mean, that's one of those things of I can't wait to see the data on whether that has a difference or it's just a placebo effect. But either way, it's really cool.
Where are the control?
Yes, that that kind of exploration. That's the stuff that we love at Holyrood. It's like let's try it and see how it goes. That's really what drives us. We have a mantra that's test, learn, improve, repeat, and that's everything that we do constantly. And we like to tell ourselves, as long as we make a 9 out of 10 whiskey, you'll never make a 10 out of 10, but you've always got to aim for a 9 out of 10, really. That's kind of my brief foray into whiskey.
No, it's great. We had Boddington in the November set, I think. So they were confusingly managed to release something, but their distillery is actually not as old as yours. You were the first distillery.
It's a funny topic to bring up because I was actually part of the commissioning team at the Boddington distillery. So depending on who you ask, they'll tell you which one opened first.
Which one was first?
It's a bit of it can be a touchy subject, but we're all friends as well. It's a nice thing that we've got this community building in Edinburgh now of multiple distilleries, and there's always cross-pollination that happens. You go up to Isla, everyone knows everyone in every distillery, and they've probably worked at 2 or 3 of them. And it's nice to see that something like that might happen at Edinburgh as well, and build that kind of community of, whiskey makers, but, whiskey fans as well. I think I have to say with my, Holyrood hat on that we were the first, but like I say, after a couple of pints, you might get a different answer out of me.
I'm just laughing at the comments as well. They're now discussing, maybe we should have different frequencies with different barrels. It's gone off on the other thing that we've sort of touched on in previous months is, especially with Westland in Seattle, is using these beer barleys, right? These specialty malts, and very rarely used in whiskey and spirits. But obviously contribute some really interesting flavors, and especially in this one in our glass as well, right? So I don't know if you want to elaborate on sort of specialty malt usage.
Like I say, Edinburgh's a brewing town. That's where we take a lot of our inspiration. Quite often, I'll be honest, the process is fairly organic. It goes along the lines of one of us will be out having a couple of pints, and then we'll go, No, that's a pretty good beer. How would we whiskify that? So we can go away, do a little bit of research, maybe ask a friendly brewer, and we go from there. But yeah, we've worked from, I describe it as like a malt elevator in terms of the level of kilning and, toasting that goes on there. But we work with things like, one of my favorites is amber malt, also known as biscuit malt. And it does exactly what it says in the tin. You've got a little bit of syrup coming through there, but it's pretty much, you're munching on, hobnobs. That's the kind of vibe of the flavor that you get there. We work with things like crystal malt, famously used in like Scotch red ales and things like that. Really strong kind of caramel and toffee coming through. And we go right the way through to, your chocolate malt. We've now seen that kind of begin to, permeate the industry. Signet obviously is the one that most people know with chocolate malt in it, but we love using it. It gives you a character. I think it's a bit of a misleading one because it's not, you say the word chocolate to different people around the world and they think of different things. We've got, the classic Cadbury, but there's Nestle, there's dark chocolate, there's Belgian, there's all these things, but it's much more kind of cacao and a bit of kind of coffee to it, I would say. We've even gone so far as using black malt, that's normally used in your beers for just a bit of color, maybe a little kind of bit of astringency in there and stuff. We've, as I said, we do iterative approach. We've learned the hard way that you don't want a lot of that in there, otherwise it tastes like you've just got a glass of burnt toast essentially, which isn't the best thing unless that's your jam, of course. But we love the opportunity to kind of play around with these things, and it's not just using them in isolation; it is using them together. Like we've gone out and taken, classic recipes of beers, like we'll find an IPA we really like, twist the arm of a brewer and find out how they made it, what the malt bill was. Or, we looked at 80 Shilling, like I say, is the beer that kind of put Edinburgh on the brewing map for a long time. And we've, taken that. Obviously, you can't use some stuff in brewing, we're not throwing oats in there or anything like that. It's all, 100% single malt, but you can build these mash bills that replicate those great flavors that you get in a beer. And what's really interesting is you kind of unveil some of those flavors because we're not putting hops into the mix either. It's all very either malt led or yeast led for us at the moment. We are kind of in that process of refining what we do, moving through, but the quote I've used, which my boss doesn't always enjoy, is we're kind of like Willy Wonka's booze factory a little bit. It's if you have an idea, whether you're, the distillery manager like myself, whether you're running the distillers, or even, you work in the shop, you're in the warehouse, you drive the truck. If you've got an idea for a recipe, I'm open to it and we want to give it a try. And that's what drives what we do. And it's all about flavor, texture, the heritage barley varieties that I talked about that we've used, things like Chevalier. We love that at Holyrood. It's, probably one of the oldest kind of varieties that you can get a decent amount of to use, unless, somebody's finding a malt vault somewhere that's got them hidden away. You can very quickly see why the big guys don't use it. It's a nightmare to process. It's like wet cake trying to get it through the system, but you get these textural properties that be it like a kind of savory meatiness, a bit oily character, like a depth that you don't find in kind of modern strains like Laureate and things like that. And that's what we love is, try something, you're standing drafting out in the rain for 45 minutes instead of an hour, and you go, let's maybe not do 100% of that next time. And we can kind of refine it and move. And we've been very purposeful about not doing too much on the cask side because we want to work out what we're doing with these things first. And that's really the journey that we're on at the moment there. I'm
going to read out some comments because they've been diving in. Chris is the first comment. It's like, a buttery biscuit base. Spot on. So everyone's sort of agreeing with that. We've got Peter who's getting some creamy fudge and strong Scottish tablet, which is definitely like one of your notes, right? Like for this one. Mike Pizarro's actually found it slightly sickly to start with. It's definitely a sweet one. So I think as a first, like, oh, what's this? What's going on in this glass?
He's not wrong, and I did laugh when I seen the tasting card and we'd maxed out the sweet category. I was like, well, that's a fair descriptor, I would say.
Never before been done.
No, this is my Scottish taste buds. We grow up eating tablet and drinking iron brew, so we like things sweet, and that's this sort of distilled down to its essence as well. I've called it a dessert whiskey a couple of times with people as well. I think it really does have that nice kind of sweet punch to it. And part of what we do is we always try and have something different when we put a whiskey out as well. So the whiskies that preceded this one was, about as straightforward as we get at Holyrood. Our first release was, very straight down the line in terms of the malt and yeast varieties, but the couple of cool casks in there. We had a peated release. Embra was our second one. So for this, we wanted to just go completely different. And yeah, we it's bourbon town we're in here. You got that lovely kind of blanket vanilla that drops over it. Got a little smattering, a few other things in there, but if anyone's ever interested, we put a full breakdown on our website or on the bottle. If you scan the QR code, we take you to a page that gives you every little morsel of geeky information that you could probably look for. The mash bill here in terms of what's in there. You've got chocolate malt. You've got a very small amount of peated malt in there. You've got Vienna. You've got caramel, Crystal 240. So it is really toffee, caramel, sweet. It is, somebody said tablet there. It's right on the money. That's I'm going for, my grand's home cooked tablet that you can feel your teeth bending back the way when you take a bite into it. But we think it's got a nice tempering of a few things in there as well. Chocolate malt reins it back, leaves it on the kind of the palate at the end there. I'll let the guys watching, actually. I'm just rambling away here, so I'd like to hear a few more of what they're saying there.
No, it's all right. There's plenty of comments coming in. I mean, there's some people getting some of the roasty, stoutier notes. There's a lot of people who are really enjoying it. Peter's added a bit of water and decided that was a good move. He's enjoying it a little bit more now. Pexman's saying, so this is the iron brew of whiskey, eh?
Maybe I wouldn't say that. My boss might have something to say to me about that one, but it's inspired by iron brew, I would say.
There was a question as well. Hold on. I think it was Jeff's was yes. So obviously we've talked about like a lot of the malts that you've used. What we haven't sort of maybe dived into quite as much is the yeasts you've used. But Jeff's is also asking how and when these are used. Do you combine them all or add them? Do you combine them all in one dose, or how does that work?
It's a great question, and it's something that we've changed our mind on quite a lot, to be honest. But we've really found that it kind of depends on the recipe that we're making and the yeast that we're using. We'll always do a cold pitch. Most of the time we will put distiller's yeast in there just to get it moving and get it over the line. But quite often what we'll do, the example I would use is a brewing yeast. It's designed to go after the same sugars as our distilling yeast. So we will chuck that in usually about 1,000 litres into the transfer, so fairly early. We give it a head start. We let it do its thing. We keep an eye on it. And then as soon as it feels like it's starting to kind of hit its peak and come back down the way, we'll chuck in the distiller's yeast there and just give it that kind of, extra whoosh. But sometimes they don't play very nicely with each other, It kind of turns into Mortal Kombat in the washback sometimes. There's a couple of strains in there duking it out, and you kind of wait to see what comes out the other side. But, the example I'd use is champagne yeast. That's something we've done a bit of work with, and it's fascinating to see, the character you get out of it. There's almost an effervescence, kind of like you would see in champagne, but obviously we're not carbonating whiskey or anything. But it's got that character, that flavor, but it's a nightmare in there. It's munching everything before it goes after the sugars, including its, brothers and sisters of the yeast world. It's munching away on them. So there's all these things you have to take into account, but that's where it comes back to the process that I mentioned of we try something, we learn from it, then we improve it and go again. And
absolutely.
Yeast wise on this, you're looking at a pretty hefty amount of yeast in here. I have to say we've got, a couple of strains of distiller's yeast in here. It's going to spread across, obviously, the vatting of the cask. We've got really classic old school brewing yeasts, Tetley 70. We've got, SO4, USO5, Nottingham Ale. And then we've got a tiny smattering of Levine wine yeast, which is like a tropical wine yeast. And it just helps, we're kind of blessed with the fact that in the early days, we made a lot of whiskey recipes. 2022, we did 99 recipes, which is insane and mental, and probably why my hairline is taking a battering, if I'm totally honest. But what that's done is give us this huge knowledge base that we can then continue to refine, keep what we like, change what we don't, and kind of, get towards a more, a less crazy amount of whiskey recipes, essentially. But yeah.
See, I don't know if you're aware of this even. Master of Malt, some of us sort of pitch whiskies forwards to like a what we're drinking at the moment, sort of top 10 of the month type thing. And a few months back, Sam Simmons put this whiskey forwards to be whiskey of the month. And then we've actually just done like our retrospective of the year. And that ended up being his choice like for the year. So this was like in our whiskies of the year now, that this is Sam's choice. And I just thought it was worth reading out sort of what he said.
Oh yeah,
it's very cool.
That warmed the cockles of my heart, I'll say that.
He said, I recently tasted this with head distiller Calum Rae. The 4-malt character has balance and grace, exploding with flavour twice, spice and fruit, and then lasting raspberry compote and cream with cherry hints, and then all capital letters, full stop in between each word. So damn pretty.
Yeah.
There you go.
I saw Sam when we were at the whiskey show down in London, and he was practically doing my job for me. He was just bussing groups of people over to come and try it. Compliment, and it's a nice thing to feel. Imposter syndrome can creep in at any point, and it's great to banish that when somebody like Sam comes over and he's literally dragging people away from other places to come and try your stuff. You
gotta try this.
Yeah, I mean, what more praise do you want than somebody literally, almost dragging somebody against their will to come and see you, and then them going, "Oh, that's pretty good, actually." So, that was great to hear, and I think it's that thing of, we are whiskey geeks, so a lot of whiskey geeks naturally gravitate towards us. And, somebody like Sam's flying the flag for us, then that's just another string to the bow, so to speak. So yeah, the whiskey here, I hope everyone has enjoyed it. I will say part of the thing at Holyrood is we don't do a core range. We're very much borrowing from craft brewing a little bit in terms of we'll make something, put it out, and when it's gone, it's gone. So I will say if you do enjoy a bottle of this, keep a hold of one just in case it's not on the shelf at any point soon as well.
Indeed. Make the most of that member store discount.
Plug. Thank you very much, Calum.
Like I said, I used to be a tour guide. I know the sales thing. You got to do it now and again.
So yeah, I mean, the time's flown by. But I guess it'd be exciting to sort of hear what might be coming up next from Holyrood.
Yeah, so we actually released a whiskey today. Again, got my salesman hat on here. It's actually directly behind me on the shelf here. Could have planned that better, but this is our re-rack series. So we kind of do flagship releases, which is our kind of bigger size releases like the Ambir that the guys are drinking today. We also do single casks, of course, and this is our kind of middle ground here where we've really just thrown the rule book out and it's allowing us to do whatever we want, basically. So this is actually a little bit of a callback to our inaugural release Arrival that we put out. This is actually one of the casks that we felt was too good to go into our inaugural release, and I think the whole room had a simultaneous wow moment, and that's why we kind of felt we needed to sit on this one for a while. So delighted to say this has come out today. We've got a few more things coming out this year, continuing on the trend of specialty malts and a few other things. It is slightly more sherry based is the little teaser that I'll give you coming down the pipe there. But yeah, if anyone's interested in what we're doing, I would really encourage you to come and see us in Edinburgh. I've covered a very small piece of what we do here compared to what our wonderful tour guides will tell you all about. And we've usually always got something new on the shelf there as well. So if you're interested in us, come and check us out and we'd love to have you.
Perfect. Yeah, Ike's just put this is like fudge in a glass. Holy moly.
It's so good.
It's kind of dangerous at 49,
so much,
high 40% as well. It's a bit of a danger dram, this one, I would say.
Yeah, do you know what? I did know that, but I haven't even thought about it during this. Yeah, absolutely.
Squeaks
49.8.
in beneath 50 to con you into thinking.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're like, it's nothing. It'll be fine.
4 and you're like, Gucci.
Yeah.
Of course, makes sense how some people could also add water and it could take it.
Yeah.
Like, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're spoiled by
yeah.
the fact we all love, drinking cask strength whiskey. So we have to kind of make sure we're not lost in that bubble sometimes. So quite often we'll put it out a little bit higher so people can bring it down to the level they enjoy.
I like that.
For sure. Calum, it's been an absolute pleasure. This is a great whiskey. It's been great chatting to you. And hopefully we'll see you in a
thanks
bit.
very much. I'll be hanging around to see the next one. I'm ready to go on this dram, so I'll be watching along with everyone else. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Cheers, Calum.
That was maybe the butteriest whiskey I've ever encountered. Like I was like,
It's really
when I
cool,
first
isn't
smelled
it?
it, I was like, oh my god.
And we still have another one,
know.
another third whiskey to go, which I'm also very excited about.
Flavor-wise, which is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, let's bring
Ryan.
in Ryan. And
Hello.
Hi guys. How are
Say
you
hi.
doing?
I'm having a fabulous time.
Tip top.
Yeah, it was really interesting listening to the guys there. Felt that very intricate, detailed descriptions of exactly what goes on. So yeah, good to learn a bit more about those distilleries as well. Hopefully I can give a wee bit of insight into it. So,
Definitely. Everyone who comes on here is just fountains of knowledge, and I feel like I don't ever want to say anything. I'm just like, let it wash over.
Speak. Well, I hope so. There's nothing I can't answer.
No pressure.
And now we come to
Yes.
but no, it would be great to hear, first of all, so you are the brand ambassador for Ardnahoe.
Yeah.
A little bit about what that entails and how you got here.
Yeah. So I've got a kind of funny history with the distillery. I am actually from Islay myself.
Amazing.
So when the distillery opened in 2000, we started production at the end of 2018, and the visitor centre opened in April 2019. And at that point, I was still studying my undergrad, so was heading home for the summer, and just thought like kind of everything about the distillery was really exciting, and the sort of history that comes with that. So I started my job as a visitor centre assistant, mainly doing tours and things at the distillery, which was really, really great. And did that for a couple of summers. During COVID times as well, we were actually really lucky, managed to get open for those summer spells, which was quite nice. And then I moved to Glasgow, and an opportunity came up in the office as I was studying my master's. And I just got myself a little bit more involved and asked maybe too many questions, I think. And after my master's was completed, I was offered a graduate role, which is sort of brand ambassador / kind of commercial trading as well. So I do a bit of both of those things. And quite a small team, the kind of family run element of the business is, kind of definitely felt within the office as well. So we all have a lot of different hats that we can put on at different points and things. So great experience for kind of coming straight into the kind of working whiskey world. So yeah, that's my sort of background.
Amazing. I mean, no one's story is ever linear.
No,
hearing them.
I know. And my undergrad was actually in geography, so it's definitely.
You know what I wanted to ask, because I was like, I bet it's got nothing to do with it.
nothing to do with it. Bit of business management in my master's, so maybe a bit more kind of focused.
The geography of Scotland.
Yes, exactly. There is elements that kind of feed into it a bit.
So Islay obviously has a long, illustrious whiskey history,
Yep.
but it's quite interesting that we have the most recently opened distillery on Islay, and I don't know, maybe back in 2017, some people would have said you didn't need another distillery on Islay, but clearly Hunter. Also, another question for myself: is it Hunter Lang or Hunter Ling?
Hunter Lang. Yeah,
knew it. But yes, obviously, back in 2017, Hunter Ling thought differently, and I'd love to know why.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, as you guys probably know, the Lang family have such a kind of history in the whiskey industry that now in the 2020s, it kind of goes back about 8 decades. So the late 40s when the family really got involved in the industry. Mainly, obviously, doing their single cask lines, single cask bottlings, buying of spirit, buying of casks from all over Scotland, and then selling that on. But I think, as time has went on, and Stuart kind of there was always sort of an element of him that wanted to produce his own spirit. And really, with that, it was sort of a labour of love, because it was kind of something that, could kind of fit into his portfolio really, really nicely, of a man that just loves whiskey and loves trying different things, and he wants to be part of that. So I think that's sort of why we opted to build another distillery in Islay. And I would say as well, Islay's got huge major distilleries, major kind of companies that work there, and similarly to us, potentially is Kilchoman, that sort of family run entity, and there was there wasn't sort of too much of that. So I think we were, at an okay point to kind of enter into the whiskey market of Islay. And very, very happily can still say we are the newest, which won't be for very much longer.
Yeah.
A few more to come. And obviously Portellen has just reopened. But I think it's quite nice that it's something sort of different for Islay, and even, the kind of the spirit, the type of spirit, and the way it's made and things, it's definitely a bit more unique, in its own right to the rest, really. So yeah, I think there was definitely a place for it.
I mean, I believe as well, it managed, the opening or the inception of Ardnahoe managed to bring the legendary Jim McEwen of Bowmore and Brookladdy fame out of retirement.
Yes, it did. I think there's been a few different things that have brought him in and out of retirement. He just can't sit still. He's a good man. He wants to, I think Stuart and Jim go way back. That is from the kind of, the days of the purchasing of casks and spirit and things like that. They've known each other for quite some time. And they were kind of, between them, it's quite funny because, as I mentioned before, they sort of kind of pinpointed different elements of production of distilleries and sort of mashed it together and thought that, that's what they sort of like in the styles of whiskies and spirit and things like that for production. So a lot of the methods that we use, they're very, very traditional in their style. And, that kind of goes back to kind of two guys that have seen a lot of the industry that really know their stuff and were able to as I say, kind of craft that the way that they wanted. So yeah, he's still a good, he's not as involved anymore. Certainly was in the inception, but he's still such a great friend of the distillery, and pops down and keep in touch regardless. He's still on Islay, so he's a good guy.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
You were talking about traditional sort of methods there. And you are the only distillery on Islay to use worm tubs.
Yes.
So, I mean, explain, well, first of all, for anyone who doesn't know, in a nutshell, what is a worm tub?
Yeah. So worm tub condenser is a very, very traditional style of condenser that's used in distilleries. There's only 16 actually left in Scotland now. So
that's a great fact.
Yeah. There's only 16. So it's actually quite funny because I always used to describe them as they sit outside of the distillery and they look like massive hot tubs, basically, from the outside. And it's basically there's a kind of copper tube that runs around the inside of those worm tub condensers. And it's a really, really slow sort of transition, when the vapors go into that copper and the water, that, when it turns into alcohol. So we also, alongside those worm tub condensers, we have the longest line arms in Scotland. That are 7.5 feet. So it's just allowing for that extra copper contact. You've got the really slow, copper contact in the worm tubs, and then a slower descent down and through the line arms. So that copper is obviously acting as, that kind of Velcro, stripping every bad kind of element out as much as we can, just to get that kind of really crisp spirit. So yeah, it's very kind of unique selling point for us, have been the only one in Islay to have those.
Okay. I might have got really confused because I thought that with a worm tub, it was all about like a really quick condensation.
Mm-hmm.
Have I got the wrong? I don't know. I thought that because it was in water that it would make it quicker, but I must be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think it's We definitely the slower is what we want. So that's what we know of.
I know completely, because like for me, like worm tubs are associated with like a really like sulfurous,
yes,
like, punchy spirit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's really, really interesting to know that it's actually all to do with a slower process.
And everything's relative, right? And you can run them slightly differently.
Yeah.
But I think
absolutely. And you do get that sort of kind of sulfury element still from that, and there's sort of that peppery note as well, I think, that you kind of get with the worm tub condensers too. So yeah, you're absolutely right in that, and saying that as well. So
it must be, it's just interesting that you can use the same piece of kit to get like wildly different results, obviously, in different distilleries.
I
love that. And the line arm as well, was that a sort of, was it a choice? Was it like a very pivotal choice to make it so long?
Yeah, I think.
Was it like the space? And you went, oh shit, we're just going to run over there.
I mean, it was a massive build, to be honest, so maybe it was just filling the space. But no, I think there was an element of the look, and also probably that, to say that we had, the longest line arms, but it was a choice, again, as I say, that extra copper contact, just to get those kind of bit more complexities kind of stripped out a little bit more, and that sort of thing. So yeah, that was a kind of informed choice of Jim and Stuart.
Okay. And the peat that you use at Ardnahoe, is it from Islay?
It is from Islay. So it is all taken from Castle Hill, which is located at Islay Airport, which is where most of the rest of the distilleries get their peat from as well. So you've got that coastal peat element. I think that you've definitely, it's the way that the kind of vegetation grows on the peat on Islay, you've definitely got kind of more heathery peat, more kind of intense flavors, more salty, just the coastal kind of proximity. So when we kind of were deciding on the spirit and what we were sort of making, it was definitely that you wanted somebody to taste Ardnahoe and know instantly that it came from Islay. Mm-hmm. I think that was always their plan, and just be recognizable as that as well. So in that, they've not done anything too kind of out of the ordinary with, in terms of what an Islay whiskey does taste like. So yeah, I think you do sort of get that kind of coastal peat hit just instantly there on the nose, really.
I mean, that's probably a good point to sort of jump in with some comments, because exactly, people are I think people are enjoying sort of the contrast between the 3 grams tonight, but also people are cracking open this one and being like, oh yeah, I'm being taken to Islay. There's a few comments like that. That familiar Islandness, that's from Chris, that's like nailed it. Yeah,
absolutely.
Other people are getting seaweed and campfire and citrus, and we've got a couple of questions, but people are obviously realizing get some peat into the evening. Then we have let me try and pick out a couple of these questions. Jeffster was saying he visited the distillery in 2019, but needs to return because there wasn't any Ardnahoe ready to try at that point. I'm in the same boat, Jeffster.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people have that same sort of thing now. They're like, we need to go back now that we've actually got spirit. So yes, please do.
David T saying, typically not a fan of peated whiskey, but this could change my mind. They're not finding sort of the smoke and peat overpowering. And they've actually compared it to Kingsbarn's Cold Town, which is an interesting one, because that's not actually peated. That's an Islay cask. Again, it's kind of that balance of it not totally taking over, I guess. And then this question, which I've been promising, I want to get it right because it was... here we go. Yeah, it's kind of next level knowledge, potentially. The question is, where does the water come from? Is it the Curry's farm?
That is an next level knowledge of Islay. Someone knows their Islay stuff there. No, it's actually not. So it comes from Loch Ardnahoe, actually. So the Ardnahoe is located behind the distillery. The Loch is located behind the distillery, and that is called Loch Ardnahoe, and that obviously describes the landscape as well. So the Islay Estates, which is the biggest estate on the island, had the rights to that loch, and they very kindly gave that over to us. We're the only distillery to use that water source, and It's actually the biggest and deepest loch on Islay. There's many lochs, probably see like Loch Gorm and things in Cohoman, but it's the biggest and deepest. And the myth has it that when they went to measure that loch decades ago, whatever device or contraption they were using never actually reached the bottom because it couldn't get there.
That would be the Infinite Loch then.
That would be the Infinite Loch, which makes, yes. So
There it is.
we'll be making whiskey from that loch for quite some time with that amount of water. So yeah, it's good. It's good. So that's where the water comes from, not Curry's Farm. No.
You know what? I was even going to ask about the name of the whiskey, and then it just sort of answered itself.
Yeah.
Different question. So
Absolutely, yeah. I think that was the reference to having that water source and being very lucky to be able to use that as well, and the only one that can. So yeah, it's nice to show people that when they come down, you see it driving down to the distillery, and it's sort of sets the scene for them going in. So
yeah, that sounds very picturesque.
yes, it's just located, just if people know their Islay, just before Bunnahabhain. So you head down to Bunnahabhain about 5 minutes down the road after that. So we're up the north kind of coast of the island. So you had your Ardbeg and your Lathroig and Lagavulin down the south, and now you've got Ardnahoe, Bunnahabhain, and Killeela in the north. So kind of another sort of trinity up there. So it's good.
Oh, amazing. So this one that we have here is peated to 40 ppm. Is that pretty standard across?
Yeah. Yeah. So 40 ppm is our standard level of peating. And, it's interesting that kind of comments are coming in saying it's a bit more accessible potentially to other Islay peated drams, peated whiskies, because it is on the lower end of the scale, I would say. I think, when you kind of, you smell it and you taste it, it definitely feels like it's a lot lighter than kind of what it is. We are experimenting with different peating levels and things, trying some unpeated, trying some really super heavy peated stuff as well. But again, for that kind of accessibility right now and creating a core product, which is what Infinite Loch is, and will be going forward, it's the 40 parts per million is our standard peating level that we'll work with. So yeah.
How does that compare to, say, like other distilleries in Islay, just for like a sort of barometer or like for some context?
Yeah, I think you're definitely down the sort of Killeela end of the scale as well. Bunnahabhain sort of flavour profile too, potentially. Mm-hmm. And I think that, again, potential proximity and land and geography and things could also influence that. But when you think of peating levels, that's sort of where you are down the scale. I'd say we're probably medium to lower end, if I'm honest, in comparison to your heavy hitters and Portellen, around Ardbeg with Lathroig Lagavulin. So we're down that kind of lower end of the scale for sure.
Yeah. So if this is your first core release, are there still one-off releases in the pipeline? What's sort of the...
Yeah, well, we've had quite a good year so far. So 2024 was the first year that we actually released anything. So we had our inaugural release back in May, which was really, really successful. And sort of, worldwide, it was really nice to see the reaction to that. And, I think there's always probably that fear that, you can't always depend that you're an Islay distillery that's going to be enjoyed and people are going to, jump on that bandwagon. But it was really nice to see, genuine, like honest reviews about how good the spirit is for 5 years. And then shortly after that, we had our Fèis release, the Whiskey Festival, which was a small run. It was 900 bottles of first fill bourbon and X and refill bourbon as well. And that was a cask strength dram. And that was, again, just taking it in a different sort of direction and showcasing very good, high quality sort of bourbon spirits, bourbon casks. And then we had the Society release as well as the Infinite Loch. So our society is free of charge to join for anybody that wants to on our website. And that was fully matured Oloroso and PX quarter casks, cask strength. And that was delightful. The sherry.
We've got a couple of questions.
And this is 50% as well, actually, I've just noticed.
This one's sneaking up on us too, yeah.
Yeah. So I get like a kind of maybe a little bit of a choice as to why the 50%. Really, I was kind of looking back at the history of the company for Stuart, Andrew and Scott, and when they released old malt casks, like the single cask sort of range back in the 90s, it was 50% that range was, and back then that wasn't very, like, people didn't drink whiskey at that strength, and it was kind of, that was almost more frowned upon. You know, it's kind of gone opposite ways, I suppose, in some way. So they wanted to kind of hark back to that history and do the 50%. So you'll see that going forward in a lot of our releases. That'll be the standard strength.
Wow.
Yeah.
We've still got sort of people who are, you know, Paul's saying, oh, this is classic Isla. I'm absolutely loving it. You know, obviously a peat fan. Other people who are sort of, you know, being like, oh, not usually a peat fan, but yeah, it's still continuing. And I like Steve Colin Williams's comment of like, yeah, because people are getting converted to peat here, and he's like, oh, this club has a habit of converting people, yeah, for one thing or the other. And then we've got a couple of questions. Same question actually. One from Ike, who's also said, what have you done with this? It's so good. So they're enjoying it. But Stewie Baby and Ike are both interested to know how this whiskey we're enjoying actually differs from the inaugural release earlier.
Yep. So you probably have seen that it is, you know, it's what it says on the tin is it's quite similar. The difference is there is 10% more bourbon in this release than there was in the inaugural. So the inaugural was a split of 75% first fill and refill bourbons and 25% Oloroso sherry casks. And this one is 85 to 15%, mainly Oloroso and a little bit of PX in there as well for the sherry, for the Infinite Loch. So there is that 10% difference. It is quite similar, but it's interesting. I think the 10% difference, I think, you know, if I had the bottles here, you'd see the sort of influence of the sherry in the inaugural, but then the kind of more light golden sort of colour from the bourbon, that 10% makes quite a considerable amount of, you know, difference. And the Infinite Loch doesn't have an age statement on it like the inaugural did have. However, this is predominantly 5-year-old casks in here, and yeah, that's how it differs. We've got a lot of, you know, exciting things planned, you know, in the future, and the next core release that we're going to be have out hopefully in the shelves by March, April time is a heavily sherried version. So that's going to be your more sherry influence as well. So you'll have different iterations of the kind of casks that we're using. So.
Very nice. Get the full spectrum.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
That was something I was going to ask as well, going back to sort of some of the comments. Have you found a lot that this whiskey surprises people who didn't think that they liked peated whiskey?
Yeah, I think so. And I think what surprised me more, like going to shows and festivals and things, is it's peated whiskey, but it's also still quite young. So again, you know, there's always that element of people are a bit like not sure that will work for me, but it does. And I think that even at 5 years, we've kind of showcased how well, you know, balanced it is already, you know, in terms of the cask maturation and the spirit type. So yeah, I think it has surprised people, and we've, you know, with the methods that we use in terms of production, it allows for quite a sweet, fruit forward spirit as well. So, you know, you do get that with the sort of peat kind of warming in the background. It's not sort of sharp in any way or, you know, burning sensation in any way, really. So I think that people have enjoyed that and maybe find it a bit more accessible than maybe some other peated whiskies that they've tried.
Yeah. I mean, we've definitely got some converts tonight.
It's good to hear.
Are age statements something you think you'll do in the long run, or?
Not sure. I think we will do eventually. You know, we're currently looking at a lot of different plans and things for future products, and timelines and things for how that's gonna roll out. But yeah, the aim is, you know, we want to have a cool kind of age on the bottles at some point. So yeah, we turned 6 in November last year, so our spirit's now just past 6 years old. So we're getting there, slowly but surely. We're getting there. But I think 5-year-old was the right time to release. It definitely was. It was ready at that point to get something on the shelves.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. If this is it at 5-ish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to see what comes later on. I want to ask about, like, it kind of sounds like obviously you got the classic sherry and bourbon sort of combinations. Like, around in the releases so far, or like in the upcoming ones. Is there like much cask experimentation going on?
Yeah, there is. We are mainly filling bourbon casks. Probably about 70% is bourbon casks that we're filling, and then about 25% is sherry thereafter. We are experimenting with some other types of casks, some Madeira casks, rum casks, that sort of thing. Some wine casks as well. Some funky things that we've pulled in that we're keeped ourselves. We definitely, and that, with the intention of going back to the question before, of doing these kind of sort of one-off releases that are more limited, and looking at markets right now and seeing where that sort of works out the best for us. So hopefully we can get something for the UK market sometime soon. So yeah, that's the plans so far.
Nice. The time always sort of flies by, doesn't it, Jess? And we feel like sometimes we sort of scratch the surface, but it has been great to talk to you, Ryan. I'm conscious we've got another couple of whiskies that we're only going to go through very quickly. Obviously, the focus has been on the three we've had great guests for. But yeah, if we say goodbye for now, but not for too long, then we'll see you in a minute.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the chat. Cheers.
Cheers, Ryan. Cracking evening, Jess.
So good. It is funny as well that like I don't drink much smoky whiskey like this, like just on its own. And I feel like this is going to sound like I'm rubbing it in, but when you have been to Islay and you drink Islay whiskey, like it genuinely does take you back. Sorry to anyone who hasn't been.
So they're trying to organise a trip in the chat, so maybe I'll fix that. Yeah.
Oh my God, that would be iconic. Please let that happen.
And failing that, there were some of them met up in I think Drambar not long ago.
Yeah.
But it was the middle of Christmas madness, and there was no way I could join them at that point. But yeah, they're talking about another meetup in February. So.
Oh my God, I've never been to Drambar. I'll come.
Exactly. Yeah. I love these sort of like extracurricular pour and sip activities.
Yeah, it melts my heart. If anyone could
have a quick look at these, the other two drams in the box, right?
Quick drams. Obviously, no pressure to drink these. 5 drams in one evening is a few. Where should we go first, Jake?
Do you want to go with the Tomintoul first?
Yes. So Tomintoul has the sort of nickname, the gentle dram, which I feel like, not that it does it a disservice, but yeah, I feel like it might undersell it a tiny bit.
I think that's right, but they do sort of lean into it, don't they?
No, that's what I mean. I feel like it's almost like if you didn't know, you might think it's like not an insult. What am I trying to say? You might think that it doesn't say so much about it, but actually, like, it's exactly what it wants to be. It wants to be this like wonderful, drinkable, like lovely dram that you could just reach for whenever. So yeah, it's like a really, really classic Scotch single malt. The distillery was founded in 1965. And the one we have today, well, not today, whenever you want to drink it, is the 10-year-old, which was launched in 2002. So it's been around for a while. You might have not tried it yet. If you haven't, I strongly suggest you do. Again, it's like a very delicate, slightly sweet, slightly fruity dram. And yeah, I would say save this for when you... It's a dram that I feel like I would have when I don't know what I want to drink, because I feel like you can't really go wrong with the Tomintoul, because it's got that vanilla in there. It's slightly nutty. It's got a little bit of fruit, but I feel like it's more on the sort of honeycomb side of sweetness than the sort of fresh tropical fruit. Yeah, love it.
Absolutely. I think we mentioned on the tasting card that the master distiller, Robert Fleming, who's a 4th generation Speyside distiller, has just sort of celebrated his 50th year in whiskey last year as well. So that's pretty cool.
Oh my God. Well, happy whiskey anniversary.
Let's drink to that.
Yeah. Oh my God. What a master. Genuine master.
And then, shall I have a look at this Lindores?
Yes.
And we've had a couple of whiskies from this distillery on pour and sip before, one of which was an exclusive cask, which Always make sure I've got my notes now, because otherwise someone will know in the comments, and it's like, I should know. The exclusive cask was in August 22, according to these notes, what I have in front of me. And then we also had their Roman numerals, but 1492 in November 23. So yeah, we've had 2 or 3 of these. It's another lowland distillery, which is interesting, because we've had 3 tonight actually. So Daftmill, Holyrood, and this Lindores, and another 2 last month, and then I think there was one in the set before that.
And that's like all of the lowlands.
it's some. There's so much now, and like also, so good. But yeah, it is kind of mad, because when I first started getting into whiskey, it was like there were a couple of distilleries in the lowlands. That was it. You could get a couple of closed distillery bottlings still on top of that, but yeah, it's very interesting, because we didn't do it on purpose at all. Like we haven't been loading these sets with lowlands.
You should have leaned into that. You should have been like, we definitely planned this.
No, we've just been loading them with whiskies that were interesting and that we liked. And
I guess that's one thing, is that it's a testament to not getting bogged down in the geography, but the diversity.
Totally. I think well, maybe we'll ask we'll ask a couple of our guests about that in a minute. But yeah, this is an interesting one, because the whole history of it is that it's on the site of this old abbey, which is related to possibly the first written documentation of whiskey or some sort of malt spirit, ever in any document. And that abbey is, am I going to get it? No, I haven't got the name of the actual order of monks, but essentially, like the order of monks that the abbey was part of is from an area in France, which is Tomintoul, and that's where some of the casks are from that makes this whiskey. So it's like they're big on the history links.
Yeah, like that. Confusing.
Yeah, to actually sort of make friends with where the order of monks historically came from, and organise to have these sort of fresh casks that have never held anything else created. Obviously planted new trees as well. It's been years of work.
Wow.
And then that goes into the mix with the usual bourbon and STR casks. STR casks, by the way, is shaved, toasted, and recharred wine casks. It's another classic that we've come across a few times in Foreign Sips. But yeah, it's a big sort of oak forward, interesting, oily chestnut notes.
Yeah.
Another very different whiskey. I think both these extra ones probably, take some time on them on another day. Yeah. Sweet. Should we bring our guests back?
Yes, please.
Let's do it. Okay. Let's bring them
Thanks
all
for
back
hanging
in.
around, everyone.
That's all right. It's been riveting, to be honest. I've had a fair good time.
No, thank you. I think we ask like 1 or 2 questions whilst. Do you want to ask our members the question, Jess?
I would love to. I love doing this. Yes. So if you're new to Pour and Sip, every month we will always ask you to pick a favourite from this night's box. It can be any one of the 5. And we promise our guests won't get offended if you don't pick them. So yeah, throw your vote in the comments. And I always say this: you can't say all of them. It just doesn't count. So, yeah,
But it might be the case.
Be brutal and honest, and yeah.
So while they're sort of chatting and deciding, we could sort of have a bit of a discussion. Which I think the sensible thing to talk about is probably what does lowland whiskey even mean anymore?
Oh, Jake, we have time for that.
Yeah, in brief. So I don't know. I can't tell if Francis is about to open his mouth and say something. It looked like that.
Oh no, I'm not. No, the regions are came about because of tax reasons, not because of style of whiskey or anything, and it's sort of enshrined in the regulations of the Scotch whisky industry. But we proudly put lowland single malt Scotch whisky on the label because it sort of reflects the the style of whiskey that we're making. But whether it has any relevance in the modern world, I don't know. There's calls for, not myself, but other distillers are calling for Fife to be its own region now, because there's twice the distilleries in Fife than there is in Campbelltown. But if Fife could be a region, Edinburgh could be a region, Glasgow could be a region. So it gets a bit silly then, does it not? You know?
For sure. I guess you were talking about being inspired by the style of, or sort of aiming for the style of some of the old closed lowland distilleries. But I don't think that's the case over with you, Calum. So what does being a lowland whiskey mean to you?
Yeah, it's a funny one, because I've had that question fired at me, fairly recently over the last year, and I'll caveat this with, I grew up in Fife, so I actually quite like the idea of Fife getting its own region there. I'm flying the flag for that one. And, if you look at Dave Broom's kind of, revised atlas at the moment, he's kind of got Fife sort of penciled in as its own thing there in quite an interesting way. So I think Lowland's a funny one, because I feel like, because it kind of drifted away compared to other parts of the whiskey map, that maybe you could say it maybe didn't have quite as strong an identity, Islay, Campbelltown, these are places that like you kind of almost know what you're sipping in your glass before you even open the bottle. But for Lowland, it's quite funny that we've seen it change. And Francis mentioned about Edinburgh and Glasgow becoming a thing. I could see it happening as well, especially if, I think it all comes down to is there an identity, a collective identity, or are we all going off and doing our own thing? And then as Francis says, it's usually tax or marketing that decides these kind of buzzwords and things like that. But I mean, I would love if Edinburgh got, a region. I think the fact that you've got, a couple of distilleries there now, and there seems to be a push towards an experimental nature in most of them as well, which is quite an interesting thing to see. But I think it's one of those things of it can be a bonus and a downside as well, because you don't want to get boxed in. I'll speak for myself here. We're not a distillery that's easy to box in at the moment, but I don't think we want it. But it can also give you so much as well. It gives you a real launch pad, and it can give you the sense of identity as well. So I think come back to me in about 5 years' time, and I'll maybe have a better answer for what a Lowlands distillery counts as. But I think the coolest part, if you look at, as a broad scope, Lowland, we're all kind of forging a path and doing something a little bit different, and trying to do something that, we don't want to just copy all the greatest hits of everyone else from other parts of the whiskey region map. So I think it's quite interesting to see where that is going to go, and what that answer would be this year compared to 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the line.
Absolutely. And Ryan, obviously, Isla's got such a strong identity, but it's still not uniform around the island, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you've got, as I mentioned before, you've got more distilleries sort of coming to the fore now and almost kind of completing. And you're right. I think it's nice, as Calum's saying, you've got that kind of, you've got the characteristics, kind of what you're putting in the glass when it comes to Islay. But where people are experimenting and doing a lot more different things, and there's a lot more exciting things coming out of the distilleries that have been there, for kind of centuries. So, I think it's an exciting time to see what happens there as well.
I like it. What I always think about the scene in like Pirates of the Caribbean, where he talks about like the more like guidelines than rules that you need to follow, and I feel like that can sort of be applied for whiskey regions.
Yeah, it's a loose term, I think, is kind of where it's been going. Yeah. But I think that's the exciting part as well, is you don't want to put too many restrictions. Single malt's already fairly, especially in Scotland, fairly restricted thing in what you can do in terms of going outside of the box. So the more we can keep it as open as possible. And you mentioned there, the new things that are happening in the established distilleries. I think that's the exciting part for whiskey in general in Scotland at the moment, is we've kind of, taken stock and looked around the world at what all these great whiskies that are getting made around the world now. Mm-hmm. And we're all getting that inspiration back. Scotland inspired a lot of these countries to make whiskey, and it's really cool to be then inspired in turn and kind of bring it back and try something new. And I think that's the exciting part for me of there may not be a region map going forward because everyone's off doing their own thing and coming up with something unique and cool, and there's something to be said for that as well. But it's kind of let folk do what they want to do really, and make their own decisions on that region map.
That's it. I love that bit about sort of inspiring the rest of the world and then being inspired back. I think that's absolutely true. Let's run through sort of like some of these comments and
go on, Jake. What they're saying.
So Steve Coleman Williams got in first, I think. He's said that they're all lovely, but the Daftmill I've got is just a mark above the rest. I know there's a couple of people who are saying they put that in their baskets already to check out later. Then we have he got in very early, Steve, so I'm having to do a bit of scrolling now. Oh, he's also saying that he thinks they were Benedictine monks, but I think I was going for the type of Benedictine monk, which I couldn't quite
more niche
get the right word for. But difficult to say which is best. Just from David, that's cheating. That's just told you that won't fly. But yeah, each was different from each other. Of course they were, and great for their own reasons.
It's an impossible choice, really, but I love to push you all.
Mike Pizarro actually has got a bottle of the last Lindores. This is very, very drinkable, very balanced. Paul Cruz said, great box this month. All fantastic, but my favourite was the Ardnahoe. Jeff Stern, Alex have gone for the Daftmill. Chris has got the Infinite Loch. Got some more of the Daftmill. Whilst I'm going to say Daftmill, the other two were absolutely cracking. There's a lot of people saying this is just an amazing box. Real Boinga.
Huh? I said you can take the credit for that then.
Well, I think the producers of the whiskey should take credit for that, really. And then Real Boinga has said that they've got Ardnahoe first, but they would very much like Ambir for dessert, which is Clive loves his Isla, but has got Holyrood as their pick. That's their vote. Steve Howdy really like the Tomintoul, so he's cracked into the extra drams. And I mean, there's a few more. It's pretty split across the board, really. I mean,
everyone just loved it all, and that's what we like to hear.
It usually is, and it just goes to show everyone's got their own tastes. But I mean, I've loved all three, and I was very excited putting this box together, and very just delighted to share an evening with all three of you, and you, of course, Jess.
Thanks. Likewise. No, really, thank you all so much. It's like I've learnt so much, and also barely scratched the surface.
As ever,
just a delicious time.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Guys, that's a great box, by the way. I'm just saying, you've made my. I'm on holiday the morning, so you've made my weekend start early and start on a good foot. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much. I'm really enjoying the Tomintoul. I've had it. It's ages since I've had it. I've actually forgotten how good it is. So thanks for that. And
these ones sort of slip onto the radar a bit. I've been around forever. You revisit them. Yeah.
And I got a chance to try the New Make Spirit from Ardnahoe years ago. And I thought, oh boy, that's really good. And so it's quite nice to taste something out of a bottle now. And still pretty good.
That's what I like to hear. Well, thanks, guys. It's been great to come on, and I'm actually heading to another festival tomorrow, so I'll be on the train with the remnants of this house. That's my plan.
Nice. Comments are still coming in. Just big thank you to all the guests. So interesting. Great evening. So thanks from them as well. And good night, everyone.
Brilliant.
Good night. Thank you.